If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1, we passed a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice.
Step aside, please. We have white privilege.
Yeah, check it out. Hey.
This is what we were taught, sir. Sir, maybe you didn't know, but we have white privilege.
Who you trying to mess with, Issei? Don't you know who my daddy is? Son of Joe Biden, and boy, it's tough. I put the crack in the pipe and smoke it up. Every day I'm tweaking, laptop leaking. Pictures of me on a cocaine bender. But nothing is better than crack cocaine when you're rich and famous in the Ukraine. Cocaine in the Ukraine. Cocaine in Ukraine. Cocaine in the Ukraine. Cocaine straight to the brain. Cocaine in the Ukraine. Cocaine in Ukraine.
Warning, some viewers may find the following footage deeply disturbing.
You're a fucking genius.
Hey, this is Kurt Wallace, and I have my good friend Jack Hunter with us today, and we're going to be talking about the Hunter Biden pardon and some of the potential pardons that will be coming up after January 20th. And Jack, thanks for joining me for this conversation.
I beg your pardon. Good to be with you, Kurt.
Good to be with you as well. On Sunday, Biden pardoned his son. I have a son. I don't know what I would do. You want to have tough love on your kid, but I would venture to say a lot of parents would pardon their kid. And of course, Biden's been a liar his entire career, so nobody should be surprised that Joe Biden said he's not going to do this, and then he ends up doing it. I don't know why anybody would be surprised about that, but anyway, what's your take on that? And I kind of want to talk about some of the oddities around this pardon at this time prior to being convicted or sentenced for his crimes.
Well, let's start with where you began as a father. I don't think anybody would be mad at a father looking out for their son or daughter, even if they were wrong. That's what family's about. That's what loyalty is about, friendship even. But in this case, the father happens to be the president of the United States. His son, it looks like he hasn't been convicted of anything, some shady stuff that appears criminal on its face, and that's a different context than just I'm a good dad looking out for my kids. It's a little beyond that. So Joe Biden repeatedly vowed, I will not pardon my son. They asked the White House, press, Jean, whatever. They asked the press secretary is what I'm trying to say. And she said repeatedly to reporters that Joe Biden Jean-Pierre, yes, would not pardon his son. Joe Biden would tweet out things like no one is above the law. And Democrats broadly held themselves up as we can't let this Donald Trump authoritarian, no respect for democracy, threat to democracy guy get in there again. We are the defenders of democracy. We're the defenders of the rule of law and democratic norms and standards. And here I am talking to you, Kurt, and Joe Biden has pardoned his son, and we don't know what for yet. Maybe he knows something we don't, and we could all speculate about what that is. And look, this all stems originally. Let's forget about the smoking crack and his relationships with different women and children that he sired, to use an old-fashioned term. Let's start with 4 years ago, right before the election, the New York Post, a legitimate newspaper founded by Alexander Hamilton. It's been around a very long time. Does it lean right? Yes. Does it do good work? Yes. Is it credible? Yes. They had a story about a laptop found, and Rudy Giuliani was involved in this, but it was at a repair shop believed to be belonging to Hunter Biden. On that laptop, there were questionable emails and information about business dealings with a company called Burisma in Ukraine. and references to the big guy, which you would think might be the father of the laptop owner who was a vice president and current president, and kickbacks and things like that. And we were told by the mainstream media that, according to former intelligence officials, whose job when they were current intelligence officials is to lie, that's what the CIA and FBI does. But these former intelligence officials, 40 of them, I believe, said that the story about the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, was not true. And the entire media, who are supposed to ask questions, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, oh, these are intelligence officials. These are former government officials. This is news. We're going to report it as such. And they said it was Russian disinformation. It gets worse. At the behest of the U.S. government, as we learned via the Twitter files reported by Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, and a few others, we learned that the federal government twisted the arm of Twitter and Facebook to suppress and disallow the sharing of the New York Post story about the Hunter Biden laptop. The classic definition of censorship. Censorship, Kurt, is not if you just said something and I took it off your social media, because I'm not the government. I'm just a dude. Censorship is when the government forces private entities, whether a company or an individual, to not share speech or not say things they don't like, to censor it, take it down. That's exactly what happened before an election by the Democratic Party and its operatives who were in charge of the government. And that's who's a threat to democracy? That is undermining democratic principles and norms. So here we are. He's pardoned Hunter Biden, and that context has to be brought up. That people might hear me saying, "Oh, well, Donald Trump is wonderful, and he's a beacon of democracy." I'm not saying that. He has his own faults, but I'm not going to ignore everything I just said and pretend like all this is fine. No, the Democratic Party has been a threat to democracy since Joe Biden stepped into office. It's been proven throughout. When the Twitter files came out, Democratic members of Congress were like, "Oh, the people pushing this are conspiracy theorists and liars." It's like, no, damn it, they're journalists. They're doing their job, and you won't listen.
They were on the left. Taibbi is not a right-wing guy. He's on the left.
This is no Rush Limbaugh turned reporter. He's a left-wing guy. He was a Barack Obama supporter, thoroughly so. Hated Trump. Never voted. I mean, good God, what are we talking about that? But we live in a era where people just can't see that. So, before the election, I said I have some friends on the left who are liberals and are not really happy with the left right now. I have many more friends who just hate Donald Trump with such a seething blind hatred that they want this incompetent jackass Kamala Harris to be the next president. And I'm like, well, she's pro-war, she's anti-free speech. They don't care. You know what you do with that? You don't do anything with that. You beat them in an election, and that's what happened. And thank God for that.
So in the information that's on that laptop, it could incriminate the president himself.
Sure.
There is speculation that he's going to pardon himself.
I could see that
blanket
too.
pardon, indefinite pardon. I'm not going to. I'm not guilty of anything that I've done in the past, and anything you find or convict me of, too late. I've pardoned myself. Yeah. Well, that's the danger of misuse of power. That's where we talk about kind of dictator type mandates or declarations or executive orders. And what do you think about that? Or do you think that that's something that's coming? Do you think he'll pardon himself?
So this is my hope, and we're having this conversation a month and a week before, or month and 2 weeks before Donald Trump begins his second term. He has said he's not seeking revenge. He wants an FBI. He just appointed Kash Patel, who's been sounding this alarm for years, former intelligence officer who worked even under Obama, saying that the FBI and CIA, the FBI needs to go after criminals. The FBI should not be weaponized by the president of the United States against his political opponents. And you have Donald Trump saying, "I'm not seeking revenge." These people who, these inflated charges and changing what the meaning of a misdemeanor is to a felony just to go after Trump. Just all this lawfare, like that's not what's supposed to happen in a normal Republican democracy. Trump has said he wants to make things normal again. Steve Bannon, even, who served time in jail over something stupid, said, "I don't want revenge. I don't want a system where what happened to me happens to somebody else, even my political opponents." That's what I hope we could get back to. It is the Biden administration, and Kamala Harris was going to be more of this, who've taken us away from democratic standards and norms. Think about this. I just talked about the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. In this election, we have seen the Biden administration, through his DOJ and New York's Attorney General, use the government and the legal system against his political opponent. They've dropped it all now. It was never about these charges because he won. They've dropped it all now. We've seen the Democratic Party in various states try to throw Donald Trump off of ballots. If that's not banana republic, tin pot dictator crap, I don't know what is. The Supreme Court rightly said, nah, you're in the United States. We have a constitution. You can't do that. But they tried to do that. We've mentioned the censoring of opposing political views, whatever might be beneficial to Donald Trump and the Republican Party and be negative for the Democrats. They've tried to censor that. All this has happened by a party that's like, Trump's a threat to democracy. He's Hitler. We can't let him get in there. He's an authoritarian. Democrats don't mind authority. Let me say that differently. Most mainstream Democratic voters in 2024 don't mind authoritarian actions if it's their party doing it. If there's even a whiff of Donald Trump doing it, and he has done stuff that we could debate about, if he's Hitler. He is Hitler. He's Mussolini. There's no difference. Holocaust is happening tomorrow. That's absurd, and it's actually an insult to the victims of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. But that's how they behave. Biden has done everything I just said, and they're fine with it. They even rationalize it. Before the election, I would talk to Democratic friends like, these charges are BS. They want him in the courtroom so he's not on the campaign trail. They're like, oh no, they rationalize it. Oh, this is like serious stuff and these charges. I'm like, no, you're rationalizing the irrational because of your partisan feelings. And the election's over and the charges are dropped. And yep, it was always that. Authoritarian is fine if they do it.
I understand not going after your political opponents and using lawfare. However, when there is an abuse of power, there needs to be some sort of a way to stop that. And
Absolutely.
Probably the best way to do it is to go after those people who abuse the power, the people that put January 6ers in jail, the people that put Ross Ulbricht in jail, people that put Julian Assange in jail. Or, well, they didn't put him in jail, but he had to strike a deal. There's an abuse of power in the government,
right?
The deep state, permanent state, whatever you want to call that. And I mean, we're talking about the possibility of dismantling a lot of that, or scaling it down, or slimming it down, that sort of thing. But people need to be held accountable, don't they?
Absolutely. The people who have abused the system for their own political gain should be gotten rid of or punished. When I say gotten rid of, I don't mean killed, I mean fired, which never happens in government. 9/11 happened, a massive intelligence failure, not one person in government was fired over it. But yeah, people need to be routed. I would hope that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, might be part of that. Like, hey, jerk over here who made this decision, what agency are you in? What do you do? We don't need that. Bye. I hope there's a lot of that going on. Sure. I think Elon Musk said recently there were like 428 federal agencies. He's like, well, we want to reduce that to about 99. That might be 99 too many, but that's better than 428. But that's what he said. But that might take care of a lot of that. But yeah, Edward Snowden is in Russia, and he has a baby and a wife, and he's an American that wants to come home. He said that many times. Donald Trump teased the idea of pardoning him at the end of his first term. The most disappointed I ever was in Donald Trump is when he did not do that. And the reason he didn't do that, reportedly, according to Politico and some other outlets, is that Mitch McConnell threatened even more impeachment action against him. And I was like, dude, this is the deep state. Look at what they've done to you already. That's what you're scared of. If you want to piss off the deep state, free the American hero that exposed them like nobody else of his generation. Do that.
Yeah, and set a precedent.
That's right.
For that to continue. Because
here's a guy who said,
protected.
Americans, your government is spying on you en masse. Let me list the details of how they're doing it, and has done it for years. more and more and more. He's a hero for doing it. And the people in charge are like, oh, he's a traitor. That's yeah, he's a traitor to you because you're doing this unconstitutional stuff, but screw you. And we've got an administration now that might be able to do something about that. Julian Assange, I was glad to see Biden working out a deal with him. This is a man that was almost on his deathbed at one point, who's a relatively young man. He's not old. His crime was that it was leaked to him a lot of the criminal things that were happening in the Iraq war by Bradley Manning, later Chelsea Manning, who Obama, to his credit, at the end of his second term, pardoned. Thank you, Barack Obama, for that. I don't care which party does it, left or right, you did the right thing. Thank you for doing that. And anybody listening to this who probably shares our view should thank Barack Obama for that act. Julian Assange reported the information that the rogue soldier Bradley Chelsea Manning gave him. And it was stuff that shocked the world, that was criminal and that was wrong, was unethical. And for that, he was imprisoned in England for a long time and different things in inhumane circumstances. The deal he worked out with President Joe Biden is he had to plead guilty to a felony and then he could be free. He did the right thing in doing that. Any of us would have done that. This guy was living, a hellish reality day to day. But what Donald Trump could do is say, the hell with that noise. I'm giving you a full pardon. It's not criminal to do journalism, which is what he did. Julian Assange said, since I did plead guilty to a felony and that crime was journalism. The New York Post, the Washington Post, CNN, institutional legacy media for their entire existence has received information that is leaked and reported it. It is called journalism. So maybe he could get a full pardon there. That would be proper justice. And of course, Ross Ulbricht, whose crime was creating a platform, and some people might have done some illegal things on it, and they gave him, 4 consecutive life sentences or something. It's certainly cruel and unusual punishment. He shouldn't have been in jail that long to the degree he should have been there at all. Can Elon Musk be put in jail if Kurt, you and I do something illegal on Twitter? No. And he shouldn't be. But that's basically what happened to Ross Ulbricht. Donald Trump has promised twice to commute the insane sentence of Ross Ulbricht, the first time at the Libertarian Party convention and the second time at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. And now that he's won, we need to hold him to those promises. But when we're talking about pardons and Hunter Biden and other people who deserve sort of this forgiveness, that's what's on the table right now.
Now, he said, he being Donald Trump, has said he's going to pardon a lot of the J6ers.
Yes.
And we recently interviewed somebody who was basically the government thugs came in, invaded his home, put a gun to his son's head, and tried to put him in jail. He fought back. He won. He wrote a book. Trennis Evans, he was on with me last week. And there's a lot of these folks out there that have that ability or whatever strength it is, whether it's intestinal fortitude or other means to be able to fight back. But not everybody has that. And there are a lot of people that are in jail right now that for whatever reason, they're either not capable, they're just not capable of fighting back the way that some of the other folks have. And it's kind of like an American gulag in a sense.
It is. Look, as libertarians, we've talked about for years that judges have taken, and primarily it's black defendants on nonviolent drug charges and tried to make an example of them by giving them sentences that go far beyond the crime that they committed, nonviolent crimes. And we can all say, our left friends will say, this is not right. This is unjust. Well, there are a bunch of people in jail right now because of the political context of we want to make an example of the people who rioted or protested on January 6th that have sentences that go far beyond their crime of walking around inside the Capitol and touching a wall. There are people sitting in jail right now that's all they did. They should have been charged with trespassing or whatever it was, paid a fine, did a day, whatever it was, but not what's going on. And the just thing to do is to get them out of that situation and pardon them. These were not people trying to overthrow the government of the United States. That is a myth the Democrats will not let go because it allows them to justify keeping these people in jail. There was no organized coup. I know a dude whose cousin was caught up in this stuff. I'm like, oh man, he's a savvy, is he working with some Middle Eastern country to overthrow the government? No, he has a Trump hat and a MAGA shirt and just woo. I mean, that's what we're talking about. He shouldn't be in jail. He's goofy, but he shouldn't be in jail. It's so
And there's
stupid.
also a lot that needs to be sorted out with that, which I think will happen when investigations occur, real investigations around the amount of FBI agents that were there
Oh,
that
yeah.
were acting as agent provocateurs, and potentially Antifa and other. There's always at all of these events, regardless of what side it is, whoever's hosting that rally, if it's on the left or on the right,
Right.
there's going to be people there trying to cause trouble. It could be people that are, supportive of whatever the event is for, or it could be
Sure.
people that are, counter operatives in a sense. But when the government's involved in that, that's very dangerous, and that hasn't been taken care of yet so far. So
Right.
that's something else that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, and you're right. There were many peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters, George Floyd protesters, where a minority of people came in there and made it worse than it could have been. We need to look at January 6th. I mean, Thomas Massey won't stop asking about Ray Epps and he's right to do so, and they just kind of dropped it because the government covers their ass.
Tons of
But yeah,
videos about him. I mean, with him,
absolutely.
trying to incite people to go in.
Let's go into the Capitol. They're like, Fed, Fed, Fed. We've all seen the video. And,
Sure.
Mainstream media is like, oh, yeah, it's totally normal. We're not going to talk about it. And Thomas Massey's like, no, we're going to talk about this. This is weird. What's going on? So hopefully with a new administration, hopefully with like Kash Patel being the head of the FBI, who's a disruptor, we can get to the bottom of some of these things and give people true justice and just as important, the truth. What's real and what's not? What's really going on?
Let's just get down to the bottom of it, and whoever's guilty is guilty. It doesn't matter what their political ideology is.
Right.
That's irrelevant. You should not be harming other people, period.
Yeah.
Jack, before we finish, can you give me an idea of where people can find your information, and what do you want to plug?
Well, I operate at Base Politics with my friends and colleagues, Brad Palumbo and Hannah Cox. You can find us on Substack. If you just search at Substack Base Politics, it'll pop right up. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at Jack Hunter 74. I write frequently for the American Conservative and the Washington Examiner, and I'm all over the place. Jack Hunter Omnipotent in libertarian-leaning media. I don't know. Those are some of the places you can find me.
Thanks for being with me today, and let's do another one.
Absolutely. Good talk.
You're a fucking genius.